If you stand in front of the Lexington History Museum and you think, this building looks like a courthouse, well, you'd be right. The building served as a regional courthouse from 1900 to 2001 and is now home to the Lexington History Museum. Let's take a tour.
We want our visitors to walk away informed but also entertained. We believe that the museum business is a form of entertainment, and we try to mount our exhibits and displays in a way that is not only interesting but engaging, and that our visitors, whether they're natives of Lexington or visitors of Lexington, will take away something that they had no idea related to the history of our community. We are in Athens of the West, which is our main exhibit here at the Lexington History Museum. We're looking at a portrait of Richard Henderson. This is the only known portrait of this gentleman, who was the employer of Daniel Boone. Richard Henderson had a vision for the 14th colony that he called Transylvania, and it consisted of portions that we know today of central and eastern Kentucky and parts of Tennessee. But Richard Henderson can be known as the forgotten founder of Kentucky. We are in part of the Athens of the West gallery that addresses the history of the Postal Service in Lexington, the history of the hotels in Lexington, and the history of the bars in Lexington. We have a section of the Golden Horseshoe Bar, which was one of the most famous bars in the nation back in the mid-20th century. And we also have a display that will be opening July 1st on Prohibition in Lexington. We have a section on theaters in Lexington. We have theater seats from the Melodeon, from the Opera House, both the original seats in the Opera House as well as the seats that were installed during the renovation in the early 1970s. One of the interesting stories about the theaters were that there were tunnels leading from two of the theaters, the Strand and the Ben Ally, over to the Phoenix Hotel, which allowed men to seat their wives at the program and then go surreptitiously over to the hotel bar to have a drink or two and come back to pick up their wives after the show was over. At this time you have horse-powered vehicles, you have electric-powered trolleys, and then way back here in the distance you have an automobile. This is the only time in human history you had these three types of power transportation existing in the same street space. In 1910, there were 500 automobiles in Lexington. The speed limit was 5 miles an hour, but if you came to an intersection, of course there are no stoplights at this time, the speed limit was 2 miles an hour, just so we could avoid collisions in the downtown area. We are in our exhibit titled Lincoln and His Wife's Hometown, which describes the 4 times that Abraham Lincoln was in Mary Todd's hometown and the events that took place that helped shape the character that we think we know as Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln was in Lexington in 1841, 1847, 1849, and 1850. This is a concept we call Playdate with History. That's a registered trademark that the museum owns, and the idea is to provide activities for young historians to engage in that may not be the same as their parents. So children can play, in this case, with reproduction authentic toys from the 19th century. While the children are playing, the parents and adults can see the entire exhibit, take the time that they want, and knowing that their children are engaged with an activity that is play-oriented but still germane to the subject of the exhibit. We are in the Sesquicentennial exhibit of the Civil War, titled Lexington During the Civil War, based on the history by J. Winston Coleman that was published back in the 1930s. Lexington was a city divided between the Federals and the rebels, and Kentucky was not in secession, but Kentucky was an occupied state. Lincoln believing that if he lost Kentucky, he would lose the whole dang thing, as he said. So Lexington became a center of activity for both sides. This is in black and white, a photographic perspective of the African American community in the Bluegrass. We went around to neighborhood fairs and other civic events and collected photographs from family collections. Many photographs are such as this of the family. Here's the white family in the foreground and then the African American servants in the background. This photograph came from one of the 3 women's families in this photograph. but we don't know everybody in the picture. So we asked people to take these Post-it notes and write down what they know about the picture or even a reaction to the picture and post it here in this very low-tech interactive activity. A wonderful photograph of Louis Armstrong refusing to get off the bus and cross a picket line at the Phoenix Hotel when the African-American waiters and staff were on strike at that hotel. We have a picture of Whitney Young's funeral when President Richard Nixon came to Lexington with a very young-looking Henry Kissinger and an even younger-looking Donald Rumsfeld. So this is a celebration of the African-American community here at the Lexington History Museum. The building was built in 1900. It replaced an earlier courthouse that had been constructed in 1885 and had burned in 1897. And we're standing in the original courtroom from the 1900 courthouse. So this is the only space in the building to essentially remain the same as it was designed in 1900. The future of the museum is bright. The last 2 years we've had in excess of 10,000 visitors come through our doors, and we see that as a testament to the fact that, one, we have interesting exhibits, we're entertaining and informative, we're growing our donor base, we're entirely dependent on private donations. We're thankful to reside in a building owned by the City of Lexington, but our operating expenses are supported by private donations, foundation grants and the like. But it's mostly the volunteers that ensure that we are open, that we are presentable, and that we have a variety of new exhibits coming in the pipeline. Just this year, we will open 4 new exhibits in the space that you've been touring here.